Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and this is one of the big ones, the top 50 best songs of 2021. There are years when putting this list together can be strenuous and really frustrating, but this year, not so much. Now granted, I think some of that has to do with covering slightly fewer albums in comparison with 2020, something that I will get into a little more when I talk about the best projects of 2021. I just had a slightly shorter list in which to pull from. But even then, narrowing things down this much is always a tricky endeavor, so maybe it's just me being ahead of the game early and streamlining my list more effectively, or just feeling more confident than ever in what material stuck the landing the most for me, where my top 20 or so got locked in position amazingly fast. But yeah, this came together without that many hiccups at all. And while I've been kind of skittish in the past about genre representation or whether or not there's gaps that I can't really excuse, I don't really have that feeling for 2021. Feels about as balanced as ever as it's been for me. And while of course there's going to be surprises in the songs that'll spark some backlash, a certain pop rock duo has multiple entries here and that springs to mind. But come on, it's not like I haven't been down that road before either. But one thing I have said in the past is that this list does tend to be the most personal for me. The songs that have the most lasting and revealing gut punch longer term, which is still very much true. And given that most of you know I've had a pretty rough 2021, I can imagine some might be encouraged to extrapolate or wonder about where I might have been throughout the course of the year. Suffice to say that I'm looking forward to the upcoming year, 2022, a great deal more than focusing on this last one. And while there are years where certain songs and certain acts were more therapeutic for me, 2019 springs to mind, I would be withholding the truth to not be honest about a lot of this, while at the same time keeping in mind that I don't tend to share a lot about my personal life online for a lot of very good reasons. Just keep that all in mind. Hopefully we can have some fun here as well. Starting off with...
I'm gonna walk through every doorway I can stop. I need some time, I need control, I need your love. I wanna find out everything I need to know.
Yeah, if I gotta put this at the base of the list, you know that we've got a lot of very special music coming. Now, granted, I am cooler on that newest War on Drugs album compared to most, but this title track is really hard for me to deny. A glistening blast of 80s inflected heartland rock with a tremendous shuffling groove, backed up that terrific central melody and Lucius's vocals adding to all the swell on the hook. And I kinda love the lyrics, even if they slide straight into War on Drugs cliche these days. Partially being caught up in a tidal wave of searching memory amidst a stride to move forward, partially because Adam Granduciel makes a reference to Dancing to Desolation Row when they go to see Bob Dylan that is so on the nose and pointed for this band that you can't help but appreciate how at least he thought it was romantic in that moment, and it might have well could have been. Yeah, just a wonderful song.
Any day now, I'll make up for the heartache. Any day now, but you couldn't wait. Judging by the screen door slam, two taillights fading out of town. Guess it's any day now.
I mean, when this band is on their game, there are very few like them, and this is a deep cut that shows exactly what Zac Brown can get from a terrific vocal arrangement and the perfect string swell against all the spacious acoustics. But for a song in the aftermath of Zac Brown's divorce, there is something about the desperate stubbornness of the whole thing that strikes a really powerful chord for me, and how hollow those words began to ring out. Any day now, he was gonna change. Any day now, things were gonna get better. Any day now, she'd be coming back, and they'd be able to make it work. And she doesn't. And it doesn't. A sign that sometimes you just operating on your own pace is not compatible, and he's got to accept that loss. It's a reality check hitting Zac Brown where it really hurts, and to have the Stones actually include and admit that, well hey, maybe that comeback was actually worth it.
Won't you be my friend out in the rain? Won't you be my friend out in the rainy day?
This has always been my favorite song from Yola's album this year, and I know it's a bit of an odd choice, especially in comparison with Diamond-Studded Shoes or the title track, both of which just nearly missed this list. But this is the one that really stuck out for me, not just for the more robust country-leaning instrumentation interweaving with the soul and Brandi Carlile of all people providing the backing vocals, but the message at the core, which might be one of the most penetrating examinations of allyship I think I've ever heard on record, where she tells a lot of white allies that no, you might not get thanks, and you're not going to get the cookies or the glory for standing with people of color against injustice. But will you be willing to be a friend? Will that be enough? And you know, when you couple it with that very telling Breaking the Circle reference, I gotta say, it's a tough song. It demands more than you would expect out of it, but hell, when it's this great, I think I can head out in the rain.
Take my hand, Marine. Take a death grip on some part of me. From drifting far out to sea, or I'll be lost out there.
God damn it, James McMurtry is such an amazingly good writer that he can set a scene a country away up here in Canada, and I can immediately pick up the scene and the details and the texture backed off the warm acoustics that spark into that sizzling main groove. He's got that command for words that if we only get an album every 6 years, it still works. But that long-lost connection revived. It's part of the song's theme and its charm. Very middle-aged in its reunion with an old friend as life pulled them in so many different directions. But now I guess they're back in the same sphere. Why not cash in on that 30-year crush, if only to snag that moment? It's an album opener to a project where James McMurtry did not lose a step, and while it absolutely plays strongest to an older audience, as someone who's driven through a lot of southern Alberta, and it was found the long-lost connections, I'll admit it, this one struck a chord.
Folks say I'm difficult, too stubborn. It's funny, I'm real easy. Yeah, I'm bugging.
Okay, the first line of the third verse pretty much guaranteed that this would make my list. Look it up, it's worth it. Especially as I could just imagine the 1,000-mile stare that would cross Aesop Rock's face at that interaction. But when Blockhead provides him this terrific groove where the cello lurks off the dirty percussion before the synths open up perfectly for that hook, yeah, I knew they had something really special with this song. The funny thing is that this is one, while Aesop Rock's wordplay, it can be tangled and odd, as per usual, this is one that's actually really damn straightforward in him describing some eccentricities, his pretty massive skills as a lyrical bruiser, but also how he's the sort of traveling, rambling outcast who can just make magic out of anything. It's got that shaggy witticism that makes Aesop Rock so immensely likable for me, and with production that sounds this good, yeah, it's real easy.
Well, I'm just an old guitar. Nobody's ever played too good. Just lean me up against the wall. Learn a few chords and that's all. And I don't get my strengths changed as often as I should, 'cause I'm just an old guitar. Nobody's ever played too good.
Okay, I have loved this song since the very first time I heard it. Mac Leaphart makes a stripped-down acoustic song about the life of an acoustic guitar from said guitar's perspective, and it's absolutely hilarious. The references to Bob Seger, Lilith Fair, Taylor Swift, Neil Young, they're note perfect. There's another instrument that slides in from out of nowhere that is amazingly well placed, and just the whole conversational flow of Leaphart's writing, it's infectious, even as someone who is very much not a guitar guy at all. Hell, for folks who do love their guitars, this is one for the ages you probably didn't hear, and you probably should.
Nigga, so now my heart has a divot. The braids in the back of my head finna probably pivot. Mama says this life gon' follow you as long as you was living quiet. God bless it. Lost my nigga, so now my chest has a divot. The braids in the back of my head finna probably pivot. Mama says this life gon' follow you as long as you was living. She says,
This will not be the last McKinley Dixon song to make this list, but it's the one that I think gets slept on a decent bit. A deep cut swelling with horns for a really sweet hook and an amazingly smooth bass line. The entire track has that feel of midsummer in the South, with the gospel touches splash of a vibe where the danger is very much omnipresent, but McKinley Dixon can just swagger through it with naked pain and mingled exasperation, not just in seeing the killers around him that could spark some fear in certain audiences, but also the blur of responsibility in coming out of the hood, where too many black men will wind up becoming angels, and where he just wants to survive, even as black preachers urge him to examine his own blessings and all of his opportunities. All of which hits his justified skepticism in the face of his friends getting killed. It's just layered as all hell. Probably not the obvious pick from the album, but the frustration bleeding through this one really stuck for me. Y'all will probably want to give this one another listen. It's special. How is it that Poppy, of all people, delivered one of the best pop metal songs of 2021? In previous years, she's often been among the last of the songs cut, but this one slid through just under the radar, and I can pinpoint exactly why. That stalking two-step bass groove, splitting the difference between industrial smolder and choppy nu metal riffage, that gives her hushed vocals just enough room to breathe before she cuts loose, especially by the bridge and the final hook, where the lead work really leaps to the forefront and she lets loose her screams. And while the song convinces me that Poppy is nowhere close to her final form, hell, it's the entire damn theme of the song, I'd be sure as hell willing to get a few more cuts in this territory. This might be her best song to date.
Sooner or later comes a time when we will reap what we have sown. Sooner or later we all have to go.
Alright, full disclosure, there's not quite as many songs that made my workout playlist and ergo guaranteed a spot on this list in 2021. Mostly because I did a decent bit less running and more weight training this year. This might be one of the biggest exceptions, and my god, it feels amazing for Rise Against to deliver one of their best songs in years. A huge hook playing off that grinding bass groove, the seething guitars, and finally production that gives them back the texture to sell a very anxious song about environmental calamity that, ironically, drove their last fantastic song to make my year-end list, People Live Here, way back in 2014. Turns out, it's a theme that they can sell with a lot of urgency and punch, and sooner or later, more people are actually gonna pay attention.
Cop the BMW, new deposit, I picked up another bag, like fuck it, I'ma count while I'm in it. I had planes flying, crowds screaming, money counting chains, clanking shit, I guess that's how it sound when you win it.
I mean, I already talked about this one on my list of the best hits of 2021, and while there's a part of me that's legit stunned it wind up even this high here, it's deserving of it. The emotional resonance, the balanced production, Polo G's best ever hook off that ukulele line, and writing that adds that depth and complexity I've been looking for Polo G to nail the past 3 or so years. This might be one of the first big high watermarks of his career, deservingly a hit, and again, given that he is so young, I can't wait to hear where he takes us next.
I stood at the door of your place, wondering how to get out of this headspace.
To think that if someone hadn't requested this song for a review on Instagram, I would not have found out about Charlie Adams and missed out on this magic. The creaking whir of percussion against the frail guitars and the ethereal swells of synth that feel pulled half from the 1980s and half from a gleaming timbre that's damn near timeless. And Charlie Adams trying to pry a self-destructive lover out of his own nightmare. hoping to save him, or hell, maybe save herself along the way. And yeah, Rustin Kelly's here too. I actually did ask him in person who was that person he was ranting to in the hotel bar, and he told me that Charlie Adams actually wrote that verse, which is kind of ingenious, given how well she captured his own reckless instincts and voice, and how they're both burning it all down. It's a sort of song where the fractured scenes have a lot more emotional logic than sense, which helps them burn all the brighter. My god, what an introduction to a fantastic new talent. And hey, Rustin Kelly managed to get on this list for another year. Deservingly so.
There is no ice in my drink. Pop, 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 pop from behind.
This might be one of the weirdest songs to ever make one of my year-end lists, but I couldn't exclude it. The haunted, mournful organ off the gong strikes and the pulsating, jagged percussion, the creeping sense of dread that comes with sampling a great song from Fabulous Muscles. But what I love here is just how well Angela Xiu commands the atmosphere with her whispered delivery. The mistress holding the slow build, focusing on how there's no ice in her drink, precisely no chill to dampen that tension, where if there's sweetness, she commands it. And then there's that most cutting line, the distance between you and me. You never made a record I liked. Given how the song is framed so conversationally between her and her partner in crime, Jamie Stewart, the menace is palpable. And yet if there was a song that wound up on my late night brooding playlist from a criminally underrated album, it's this one. My god, what a mood.
She put a pretty dress on, wipes the tears out of her eyes. And if trouble comes a-looking, she won't be hard to find.
Although, speaking of playful transgression, I'm kicking myself that NPR of all people beat me to the Fleabag reference, but it's damn near perfect here. Emily Scott Robinson starts off playing to a slightly more melancholic tone in the cheating being described, but then the song tilts towards something more earnest and bright, damn near love-struck off that pedal steel and the organ, and suddenly you find yourself rooting for the woman who is cheating with the traveling priest, where the romance feels transgressive, but also lived in, and catching a passionate thrill off of how the bridge builds from Emily Scott Robinson's trilling vocals. This is no third-rate romance, low-rent rendezvous. This is losing your religion to find your faith in a warmer place. God damn it if I wasn't sold on it. One of the most playful cuts in her growing catalog, but easily one of her best.
Out in a loading daylight, watching the fog recede, divided the flame you slowly gave to me.
Oh god, there was a part of me that really did not want to put Big Red Machine teaming up with Fleet Foxes on this list. It's such basic critic bait, I know that. But god damn it, this one was spectacular. The warping synths built into that fantastic acoustic back piano line, Robin Pecknold playing the guy, gently nudging the other guy caught in stasis to get his life moving from being caught in the weight of his own angst and isolation, and then Justin Vernon's peculiar squawk shooting back as he tries and mostly fails to justify himself. I love the horns playing off of Aaron Dessner's production. I love how the supple groove and how sunny the entire song feels. The sort of gentle push and pull that this sort of pop folk rarely imparts with a lot of gravitas. And yet, after another year where it felt like isolation, be it self-imposed or otherwise, was back on the menu, this one had a special tug, at least for me. Maybe that spark of the Phoenix was the rebirth we all needed.
Darkness that burns so sweet. There's a calm after the storm when we're off our knees. From the wreckage down the reckoning, that's where we meet. It's an underdog story the whole world will see.
Wow, that was an obvious transition, and wow, if the Zac Brown Band wanted to deliver a line drive straight for the fences, this is it. Sure, the meta text is that it's as much of a comeback for the band as it is for America, but Zac Brown is selling it as if his life and career depend on it, and it's one of the band's best songs in a decade. The hook is enormous. It seems destined to become a political theme song, so can the right people get behind this verse? You've been warned. But what I really love here is the lyrical sentiment. Not just in serving as a rally point for everyone to come together, we got plenty of that in country, but also how Zac Brown frames it on the third verse specifically. If he's gonna lead on American Dream iconography, it's one that has to encompass everyone, giving back to each other, all different colors beyond the red, white, and blue, breaking the chain of indifference so it goes beyond, again, the basic come-together narratives, with enough earnest groundswell to damn near convince me, and I'm not American. I get the feeling this could well be a hit next year, given how it's actually being slowly rolled out on Music Row, and right now, it's got that magic. I hope it gets there.
You helped turn my culture into a parody, milking laborers for your prosperity. I wish you would have been a cowboy, Toby Keith.
This is the song for which Adeem The Artist has gotten the most attention, and it makes sense as to why. They're writing a pretty damn cutting response as a former fan to one of the most contentious figures in country music, Toby Keith. And that's the thing. This is the sort of song that can only be written by a fan. Maybe not a diehard, but one that can quote enough references from memory and who is as disappointed as they are pissed off at Toby Keith turning a lot of Southern cowboy culture into a parody that he didn't even live and just cheapens everything. And as someone who also has some very complicated feelings on Toby Keith, having grown up in the exact same era, yeah, this song had a lot of resonance beyond just the great acoustic framing, the really potent hook, the ridiculously sharp writing, and the fervent wish that Toby Keith could have been more and better than what he's been. The potential was absolutely there. But yeah, this is one of the two songs where Adeem The Artist absolutely scored a winner. We'll get to the other one a little bit later on. Oh yeah, this one hits. Probably the one that stands out the most stylistically in comparison with the rest of the project and played the most straight. But man, Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak, they just nailed it by leaning into the bluesy soul swell across the major and minor progressions. And that's before we get that gleaming key change in the final hook that, yeah, it could have felt cliched, but it never does. And while I could raise all sorts of hell about the stunning drum work and the impeccable command of atmosphere and how Bruno Mars's falsetto has rarely sounded better, I actually want to focus on the lyrics here. I've long been a fan of songs about trying to put on a happy face and be happy and miss all the heartbreak, go to the party, and both of these consummate showmen are just great at selling that conflict. For a while, this might have been my favorite on the album. Stay tuned to still see if it is down the line.
Nobody knows you. Nobody knows you. In Zurich.
This was an opening track that does so many things right that it hooked me off the first Bandcamp listen. Not just Paldera's incredible command of atmosphere with his liquid baritone, impeccably smooth but also tempered and yearning off the rich bass and on the slightly rickety percussion and that faint twinkle of keys. It's just so tastefully restrained in its sense of groove that you almost don't notice this subtle flair for a specific but often underutilized brand of 80s opulence coming to flesh out more of the song, where he might be the only one alive who could get away with highlighting her modestly packed carry-ons. But that's the trick. This is a song that's looking to recapture a very specific, mysterious jet-setter glamour where you can be anonymous. You can slip into an exclusive venue somewhere in Europe, order the most expensive liquor on the top shelf, and while it might be a throwback, to be sure, it's one where the texture and the vibe is so immaculate, wins me over every time.
I don't wanna hold back my faith anymore.
I'm still surprised Manchester Orchestra pulled this off. So much of this album this year was about the crux point and births and deaths, and this is one of the great moments where it all intersects. Not just with the great liquid piano and the swell of vocal harmonies off the supple grooves and the gentle acoustic melody, but just how well the song flows from the moment where the drums break across the hook, where he sees both his new child being born and then the death of his father, where he sees Lifeboat leave and then come again. And this is the moment where he actually realizes he has to reclaim some of his own faith. Not to convert or change anybody, he can't, and he knows that, but just as enough of a stabilizing force in his life as the changes roil around him. And even then, it might be a sympathetic echo that he likes. No guarantee. Just a really damn powerful slow burn moment, clinging to the life raft amidst a tempest. And he wrote it out to a great album. Go figure.
Said it's your life, and I'm not you, but if I were, I'd put my foot in the boot, put the boot in the truck, put the truck in the road, and go home to her.
You know, I really wish Alan Jackson wrote more story songs. He's always been great at them, and this might be one of his late career best. Of course, Keith Stiegel's production's impeccable, and Alan Jackson remains one of the most quietly likable singers in country, mainstream or otherwise. But the star here, it's the writing, where Alan Jackson's a barroom patron listening to another one come out of the rain and complain about a relationship that seems to be going awry. And I love how his message is coached not to force the advice, but to see the alternative, as someone who walked away from a relationship and didn't come back. And his life has been sorrier for it, especially when the problems being real, they're there, but they're not insolvable. There's this great sense of maturity and wisdom that translates through a song like this. And it was the highlight of his album this year. This is stepping in the right way. My god, this song was so much fun, even if it seems like it's falling apart at the seams every time I listen to it. The jittery piano lines clashing with the horns, spiking off the clattering snares and the swells of guitar and Jack Antonoff's anxious shout. But yeah, it works. For a song this petulant and straining to break free, be it of family frustrations or one's own internal angst. And there is some of that Springsteen energy that manifests in how Jack Antonoff stares toward the horizon line and is dreaming big. But what I think I love about this is just how much of this furious mess of a shout. This is a song for everyone who was stuck at home with family they couldn't stand during the lockdowns. Family that can't handle the change or just want to live in their country, even as it shifts in beneath their feet. And as much as it hurts to cut everything loose, this is Jack Antonoff saying sometimes you fucking have to blast off into that sunset. It packs a goddamn wallop, especially with that sax breakdown over the bridge. But not even the best Bleachers song on this list. We'll get to that. Yeah, this is a lot, and it's a hard listen. Ayda Rook's guttural vocals on the hook against the industrial metal guitars revving and crashing into the percussion. Backxwash's righteous holler that splits into a double time in the second verse as she rails against the African diaspora, which has left her isolated, addicted, and enraged at the injustice that she beholds. Religion has judged her, but she returns that judgment, finds them wanting. So if she's damned, she's gonna drag everything and everyone right down with her. And hell, when the song slams this hard, especially when it builds in that visceral, gory crunch after the second verse, might be terrifying, but for bloody good reason. So remember when I I said Manchester Orchestra's album was dealing with the intersection of death and new life, yeah, this is a lot more on the death side of things, riding out that bass line and the washed out guitars seething around the tension captured in the moments around a bedside vigil when you got a lot of emotions towards the one that might be passing and you're running out of time in order to unpack all of them, both for them and yourself. So there is an undercurrent of very real panic as Andy Hull tries to untangle his own thoughts as time ticks down, which makes the hooks feel all the more urgent as the guitar melodies spiral and then soar into what might be the best hook the band has ever put together. What I appreciate is just how well Manchester Orchestra uses the more wild percussion switches and ghostly effects to indicate that creeping doom that's coming in both the encroaching distance and the whole mess of emotions that can't be broken apart in time. My God, what a bleak anthem.
I'm waiting for the call of the wild. I don't wanna fall this time.
Alright, no, it's not the best from this band, and for a point this year I was convinced this would not hold up, but god damn it, Sunday's delivered yet another morally ambiguous slice of pop folk that's as expressive and complicated as it is anthemic. I love how the gauzy synths playing off the choppy acoustics and the tight groove that lets the husky falsetto tumble forth. I love how the hook earns the gravitas to slow down the tempos and just go off, and I love how the song also captures that sense of dread at realizing the relationship might be slipping away just beneath his fingers, and it's his own damn fault. And he knows it. He's letting himself be consumed by his own wild muse, but also not open up to his partner. And it's just a matter of time that despite his best intentions, it's gonna implode with the call to wild, and he's gonna deserve all of it. It's never clean cut or easy with this band, but rarely is one getting his own comeuppance felt so earned, and yet so potent.
I've got so much to say, somehow it's never the right thing. I meant to be sober, but the bar's so inviting.
Look, I'm just happy she's back making great music again. Honestly, you can argue it's been decades since Phair has been this great, but with a song like this, you could argue it fits among her best, even at her peak, mostly for the frank maturity that runs through and how it underplays the whole barroom angst, more dependent on the groove than any of the liquid guitar leads. But I love the contrast that comes with that maturity in the face of everything else, where she needs that shot of liquid courage, and she probably should not be touching it, but this long in, it's an invitation that she's not gonna pass up if you finally come through that door with her. This song is one of the best closing lines on a hook that you will hear this year that just felt so charmingly desperate enough to feel so real. Yeah, I like Phair back in reality. You know, I don't think a black metal song has ever placed this highly on a year-end list for me. Normally more of an album genre, everyone gets that, but this was something special, if only just because of that crescendo. The final song on a gorgeous album where you don't need to make out any of the vocals to hear that transcendence rise off the liquid guitars and that stunning arranged swell that knows precisely when to bring in the pianos and drums. It might not take you to heaven, but whatever magic you find on the other side, then it'll make a windswept heart sing all the way. Such a stunning movement. But you know, on the topic of crescendos and a swell towards euphoria,
I never went through what they went through and they didn't have a choice. All the things they got used to, but this is where they shake it loose. In this room I still can't move out.
yep, I told you it was one of the best songs of the year. A slow build indie pop song where Hannah Jocelyn stacks up the groove and the pianos to pick up every ragged layer of strings in order to tell the story of where she wears the dress to the party and confronts not just every half step of insecurity and misgivings for doing so, but also where the sheer breathlessness of the party sweeps her up towards euphoria, not just in a sense of belonging within her friends, but within herself. The climax within this track has to be heard to be believed, where the exhilarated joy in our trance experience is made real, where anyone can be taken along for the ride. It's just an utterly tremendous song. It stood the test of time for me all year. What a tour de force.
From a miss to a missus, then the other way around. The year I was gonna live it up, now I'm never gonna live it down.
And from it all coming together, we get the moment where it all seems to fall apart. This was the song that actually won me over proper on Carly Pearce as a songwriter and a performer, where again, some relatively traditional, well, neo-traditional instrumentation. She has to have the hard confrontation with her life plan and all those southern expectations coming apart in her hands and in public. Maybe this song hits way harder for me because I'm at a similar age and I've got a lot of peers who feel like they've had this plan and they've gotten to this point and then they've seen some of this crumble through little faults of their own. But for Carly Pearce, who has always presented herself as the music row starlet who actually had it all put together to a fault, this is where the humanity broke through. And the title track from a great album gave me a reason to care. Okay, this is where I have to stress that despite the fact that I utterly adore this song for its pop folk jaunty hook and the careening theatricality and the unbelievable catchiness, juxtaposed against the fact that it's all about hitting rock bottom and then contemplating suicide, I'm indeed okay. Jetty Bones herself has made way more cutting and revealing material for me in the past. I just love this because the juxtaposition is utterly wild, and the fact that she pulled all this off has to be heard to be believed. And really, you need some of that broad-based cheer to both amplify the underlying darkness, but also to provide some breathless cushion to all of it. In the meantime, this song was a rollicking blast of a time from a wildly colorful album that deserved a lot more attention. Check it out.
On Monday, nice out. On Wednesday, might get loud. On Friday, but on Saturday.
How is it that 21 Pilots made one of the most accessible dance rock songs of their entire career and it did not become a massive hit? What is Fuel My Ramen not smoking? And can someone get it to them? But seriously, Saturday is such an obvious smash single, from the coursing swagger of the percussion groove to the liquid guitar rollick to the slightly dead-eyed feel of the vocals taking us to that party, where they try to capture the vibe. It never quite works the way they think it should. Might as well be the goddamn tagline of 2021, where you all feel crushed beneath the current of an isolated world, where you want to break out in order to find a little bit of magic, or, you know, even just intimacy. It's a surprisingly dark song if you actually drill into what's not being said here, and the tension ratchets up really effectively before the final hook cuts loose. But it's also a fantastic dance song, and if we want to find other places where that tension flies free, well, again, not the only 21 Pilots song on this list. Stay tuned. Okay, how is it that Lana Del Rey put out 2 albums in 2021 and she couldn't make a better song in her own lane than Wolf Alice did? The amazing thing isn't just the gorgeous swells of production and how Ellie Rosal nails the coquettish vocals on the verses while still being able to belt effectively on the hooks to make them feel this epic, but also the underlying themes of vintage glamour and Los Angeles punctured at every turn. I don't know, maybe it's just because they're a UK band, but they seem to get both the allure and the iconography of a song like this, but also how to ride it when they dismiss the coke-addled LA boys. Now, there is a part of me that just wishes Wolf Alice had doubled down on this sound. Again, it's proof that I can indeed like this style of music if done with the melodramatic flourish to pull it off, but I also appreciate it's more of a one-time thing from this band. Wolf Alice might not have won me over properly with that last album, but they've got more in their arsenal than I was expecting. I gotta give them props, at least for this.
20 to 1, look at the time, it's 20 to 1. I'm on a ride with the guys and we're looking for him. If we catch him, it's 20 to 1. Feds behind me, driving a Beamer. Odds of my freedom are 20 to 1. I make a call, I'm getting him touched. 20 to 1, 20 to 1, yeah.
And you know, speaking of people that came up really big to impress me, why hasn't Dave's management pushed this as the obvious crossover single? The twinkle in the lead melody, the best pop hook he's ever had, the creeping balance between anxiety, heartbreak, and legit danger, that incredibly tight melodic flow that switches into something more aggressive and direct on the second verse, that actually features a Pokemon reference that somehow does not push me out of the song? No, it is not as cerebral as a cut like Three Rivers, or the darkest storytelling moments on both Psychodrama and this new album, but if anything, the ability to synthesize and streamline his formula into a song with this many layers of dimensionality and can also easily play to the mainstream audience in the UK or stateside, it's an absolute winner all the way down. Now push it as a hit. I'll give you good odds.
Knows how to say all the right things, knows how to get you out of that dress, knows how to make you think you're the best thing, but I know what happens next, girl.
So I said Carly Pearce won me over properly with 29. I had already heard this song beforehand, wasn't fully there, but as I watched Nashville radio snub it in favor of her ex getting a shot that nobody was looking for, this burned hotter with every single listen. And what frustrates me is that it's such an easy sell. Fantastic hook with a great punchline, one hell of a propulsive groove that could bowl over everything in its path, and some remarkably nuanced songwriting to boot, where as much as she warns away that next girl from her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband, she's also plenty willing to admit that her own culpability and how everything went awry. And again, when it's the best hook she's ever had, and Music Row is defaulting to the dreck that it platformed in 2021, yeah, no goddamn excuse for this not being huge. I don't want to have to wait for the next girl when there's one that's right here. Fix it.
You not the realest, you know that, right? They not gon' feel this, you know that, right? You need some healing, this pain you concealing, there's so much more to life, I mean. You not the realest, you know that, right? They not gon' feel this, you know that, right? This pain you concealing, you need so much healing, you probably gon' pop your shit out over.
This was the first song I heard from McKinley Dixon on Bandcamp, and where I then resolved I had to hear his album. Spoilers, it's on my list of the best of 2021, surprise. But then I also then put it in the live stream of every peer that would listen. Seriously, if you need a course on how you win over a casual fan with genuinely weird, off-kilter but potent as hell rap music, this is it. The off-kilter piano line, the creaking bass, the warped crescendo as how the strings build as McKinley Dixon's flow becomes more complex and fast and frenetic, half rap song fighting against itself, half fighting against the street level trauma that's only half buried as the block burns away every step. It's a jazz rap freakout that has two of the most ominous sentences spoken to himself on the hook. You're not the realest, you know that, right? They not gonna feel this, you know that, right? And even after all that manic buildup, they still cut it all back to let the mix contort even further, bring back a final climax. This is a rap song that should have put the industry on notice. It sounds like nothing else you will hear this year. My God, what a way to introduce yourself.
Don't you shy away. Manifest the ceiling when you shy away. Searching for that feeling just like an I love you. It isn't words. Like a song he wrote, it's never heard.
Whereas this was not an introduction. Okay, maybe in a way, 21 Pilots bringing in more guitar, but Level of Concern already told us that. And even if this duo is going to write the best stroke song in a decade, that was not just the appeal of this song. No. If anything, Shy Away is a warning set to the family that Tyler Joseph routinely referenced on Blurry Face and has now become the frequent presence in the background on Scaled and Icy. As much as he can chart a path going forward, you gotta find your own. And you better start running quick. Not just to let your own potential explode, because the demons are right behind him, they're circling. And while he's not fully comfortable, he'll light the fire up under your ass all the same. I appreciate the tension of the sibling rivalry here, especially in he sounds just how much like he legit cares. But honestly, when Tyler Joseph starts legit screaming on the final hook, this won me over in spades. One of the most propulsive 21 Pilots songs in their careers, also should have been a massive hit. Someone should have gotten on that. Just saying.
Spend my living giving thanks for the ships I never sank. Every big, every little, and the everyday things. The notes and the words and the songs I sing to the ones doing live with me.
Okay, so this was actually a song available to the public. Eric Church, I understand how effectively you siloed the Fan Club EP. You could have pushed this, you know that, right? Because no jokes, this might be one of his best ever songs. The slow build of the acoustics, the gentle shuffle of the groove that keeps up that sense of intimacy until the song actually has to open up and then ramp up the tempo with the piano for the final hook. And then Eric Church making perhaps the greatest confession of fan service that he has ever made. An extended thank you to everyone who actually gave him the chance to be the runaway train, when it's not just his spouse who's actually been there all the way, but so is everyone else. And you know, I love it because the myth-making that Eric Church has created, it ebbs back just far enough. See the music nerd at the core, the singer-songwriter, thrilled that folks actually stuck around for the ride, feeling utterly removed from the bombast with Jay Joyce's most balanced production to date, just so the moment clicks. This is just a taste of what y'all are missing from that Andy EP. Trust me when I say, it's something special.
Talking that fresh shit, I don't need gum. Cookie crumbs in the rolls, never no weed crumbs. He ain't talked to his bitch in 3 days. It ain't gotta be this way. I'm down for the threesome. I might buy a boat. Depends if Capri got space, don't really need one. I could go on the one at a time, baby, I bleed sun. Find another nigga like me, cause I ain't seen none.
So look, I have struggled to love a full Tyler the Creator album, and that includes Call Me If You Get Lost, which has problems that keep it away from greatness for me. But this song absolutely fucking rules, and it crystallizes the best possible elements from everything that worked on that album. And we got one of the most textured bangers of his entire career. The shambling guitars, the muddy synths that smash off of that crushing beat and the sleigh bells, Tyler the Creator's braggadocious snarl that bounces off DJ drama perfectly, his ability to just brag better, that being down for the threesome line was awesome, and then when you expect it all just to run on pure arrogance the whole way through, the third verse cuts through off the gang vocals, and then we get the undercurrents to the emptiness that Tyler is trying to fill with all the fruits of his success. The girl that actually wound up choosing someone else and leaves him to just rip loose on a moment that feels triumphant but can't quite fill it all in. It's an emotional roller coaster of a song that just blows through in just over 2 minutes and still manages to be funny, pissed off, and deeply heartfelt, and at least to me, one of his best ever songs. How is it that a meme song can be guaranteed to make my year-end list all the time these days? Now, to be fair, the meme was intentional and great, and the song's somehow even better. The moment where the retro soul probably intersects the most with the modern sense of humor that Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars command just so goddamn well. It's a sort of tricking rejection and then send her back to the streets that's not just set up amazingly off the verses with no perfect details, but also with that great R&B twinkle off the horns, the terrific drum work, Bruno Mars's probably best ever falsetto, and a hook that plays it off so the balance of the heart heartfelt and the deeply silly actually plays in its dividends. And it's one of the best songs they both made in their entire careers. I'm thrilled this could become a legit hit in 2022. Let's pray it holds on just a little longer.
Why couldn't the perfect words save us? Why couldn't the perfect words save us?
But speaking of sultry breakup ballads from men with impossible charisma, this was the Tenant From Zero song that really hooked me in 2021. The pulsating synth groove, that saxophone, the liquid rollick of that melody line, Paldera's incredible poise, and then that regretful sentiment I am sure that any writer has had. He's got the perfect words, but they weren't enough, or even weren't said aloud to make it last. So what we're left with is just that incredible melodic groove that stuck more deeply than damn near anything else I heard in 2021. It's honestly so direct and streamlined, I kind of find it hard to find things to describe. The ghostly echo of the female backing vocals highlighting what could have been lost, that stellar guitar line, how Paldera never approaches histrionics, so the mature regret slips through the cracks in his stoicism. I mean, just a stunner. I found this guy on Bandcamp. At least in Sophistopop these days, he deserves way more attention.
But a girl like you could be out of my head. Like tears on your cheek, I want them in my bed. I'll take you out of the city, honey, right into the shadow. Because I wanna find tomorrow. Yeah, I wanna find tomorrow.
I know some folks are going to be a little surprised that this is my favorite song from that Bleachers album, but I mean, come on. When you get Bruce Springsteen to back you up with all the vocal firepower that Jack Antonoff will never have, you get the culmination of a dream coming true for him. And all the simmering magic off the gauzy synths, the ramshackle acoustics, and that terrific main melodic motif, it makes it feel all the more special. Essentially, it is Jack Antonoff writing his own version of Born to Run, but given that he spent the entire first Bleachers album already doing that, this is a little bit more reserved, but it also captures a different sort of simmer. It's a sort of song that when the dawn breaks and you've got that one chance to chase the dream and hang the consequences, take the sadness out of Saturday night as it will. I mean, this is a song for a bleary-eyed, desperately hopeful Sunday morning. And while this did drop in November of 2020, and to some will be most remembered with a very specific event around that time in that year, hell, 2021 still held that sparkle.
I've been trying to build a machine that can convert shame into celebration. I go back in time and reclaim my name.
I remember hearing this song for the first time and just being awestruck. Holy shit, they did that. Where Adeem The Artist took their predominantly acoustic framework and made something close to indie country steampunk, where they're trying to build a machine to travel back to the times in their past when they didn't really know who they really were, trying to fit in despite expectations of culture and faith and image that they would never quite fit. And I love how ramshackle and backwoods it all feels, where the rumbling whirs of this machine they're building is the sound effect that can reach back across the generations, give them fresh hope. And I love how the song ends with the machine just suddenly dying off as the fantasy that it is, leaving them alone in the spotlight, but clearly knowing who they are. This was the moment I was convinced that Adeem The Artist had tapped into something so unprecedented with country, and at least right now, it's their best work. They got that funding for the next album, and a lot of the recording apparently already done. I just can't wait to hear it.
You should bounce, 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 man. Come to the house, man. I'll let my old lady know. You'll be in and out, 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 man. Float you a couple bands, then you head to Mexico.
You know, it's not just that this is my favorite song from Scaled and Icy, it might be one of my favorite 21 Pilots songs ever. And that's amazing to me because I am fairly certain nobody else likes this, including the diehard fans. But then again, this is one of those songs where Tyler Joseph is telling someone to run for their friggin' lives, where despite the chipper upbeat vibes of the jaunty quirk of the lead melody and the old-fashioned backing vocals ebbing and flowing out of the mix, there is this undercurrent of sober dread that can never quite be quenched, almost as if Tyler Joseph knows there are folks coming for more than just his friend. It's the moment on the album where you realize that within all the mythos that this band has built, this is a homespun bit of respite for now. He's got one more tune to spin them off. Also, the song's got a great groove, it's unbelievably catchy, the backing vocals build extremely well on the hook, amazingly well, and even if you think the conventionality makes it sound like the best AJR song that they never wrote, well really that just highlights that band's shortcomings and inability to execute on it. If y'all can't handle that, well, running away won't make you wrong, doesn't make you right either. Just saying. So, I was not a Torres fan at all before this year. I was aware of her music, but kind of in the background of the indie rock scene. But this year, Mackenzie Scott unleashed some songs that were impossible to ignore, and this is absolutely one of them. The synth low end augmenting her jagged, thicker guitar, building to a propulsive hook that I didn't even know she had it in her arsenal. But a special highlight, I have to give it to the drums here, that ramp up that crashing presence on the hook so damn effectively. But honestly, what I love about this song is a lot of the content, where basically it's a call to action. If we're not ending it, let's make it real. You're still sleeping with me, so if this isn't more, don't go let me dream big out here. And Mackenzie Scott's throatier vocals bending across her register and that synth backdrop, that's not even the most natural of fits for her, but I love that incompatibility irregardless. It reminds me of the 70s art rockers and the post-punks who found glittery dance rock in the 1980s, and this song has that exact same swagger. I mean, what a welcome surprise. I can only wish for more.
Soon they're going to close, but I'll see you another day. So much has changed since you've been away.
You know, maybe this is the biggest surprise on this list. It shouldn't be. I was awestruck by this song when I covered it on Billboard Breakdown, and I'm just as much so now, because you can argue this is among Ed Sheeran's best ever songs, with the closest parallel probably being A Fire Love from Multiply years ago. But Visiting Hours feels bigger, a song dedicated to a dead friend and a promoter, where you might initially find yourself a little bit surprised that with all the pomp and circumstance that Ed Sheeran had a close enough connection to make it work. And then he sings it, and I wound up believing. The liquid keys, the synth horns swelling to support the acoustic guitar and piano in his increasingly delicate falsetto. I could swear there's a pedal steel in the song, but turns out there's not. And then the backing vocals swell up with the touches of auto-tune, and you realize that Ed Sheeran's trying to thread that needle between ceremony and intimacy, somehow making it work. And I think a lot of it comes down to the writing. The focus on family, the fine details, the yearning for small interactions, and even a fleeting connection that spans space and time. You might not buy into Ed Sheeran's sincerity. Right now, he's the easiest punching bag in the industry. But this is a song that captures enough reality to sing true, and I can respect that.
Your nails are digging into my knee. I don't know how you keep smiling.
I commented a week or so ago online that Lucy Dacus's home video should join my collection of holiday albums, And this was the song specifically I was thinking about as to why, because Thumbs is something else. Traveling with a close friend to see their estranged father that you clearly know he's been neglectful, you're on the cusp of going nuclear in a way that will not be okay for everyone, and you just have to knuckle it all back and try to be there for your friend, was barely holding it together herself. Factor in production that accentuates every subtle moment of tension, Lucy Dacus watching it all with just disbelief, increasingly raw heartbreak. Yeah, we've all had family scenes like that around these times of year, haven't we? And Lucy Dacus is just so raw on this song that it becomes legit uncomfortable, but that only accentuates its power. It winds up among her very best.
The sun tripping into the void. I don't mind it down here, nothing left to avoid. Everybody says that they want some. I am getting sick of people talking so much. Hold me underwater, not afraid of drowning. The light is everywhere.
So Slothrus made a hard-driving wall of sound indie rock banger that goes unbelievably hard. It's all about barely staying afloat amidst a tidal wave of pressure and attention, where you're seeking just a precious moment of escape, all coaxed through decidedly nerdy reference points. Can't imagine why this one hit for me in 2021, just mystifying here. But seriously, that lead guitar slams so hard, especially opposite the slightly more eclectic percussion choices and the dead-eyed, slightly auto-tuned vocals that are on the cusp of completely cracking and breaking down, especially when the outro just explodes into the sizzling maelstrom. Songs like this are why I had such less tolerance for underwhelming guitar progressions across the mainstream this year, to say nothing of the production, where the riffs can still be tuneful and crush you like a herd of elephants. But you know, if we're gonna keep this in anthemic territory, I swear, entirely too few people heard Creeper's EP. That was a coda to their 2020 album this year, and it's a shame, because they might have missed out on one of Creeper's best ever songs. Yes, better than Black Rain, I said it. The gleaming pianos, Hannah Greenwood finally getting more space to belt and occupy the mix proper alongside Will Gould. For all the mingled goth, glam rock, Americana romance that they can muster, especially when the bridge just gets wild enough in order to bring some of that old punk edge back. But, you know, while I could rave about that guitar solo that cuts the great bridge all day, it's the hook that just blazes so hot across the night and hits that precise balance between camp and realness. Somebody please hook this band up with a producer that can actually let them realize all their cinematic ambitions. Because again, when the compositions rule this hard, yeah, this was something special.
Screen runner, gotta stop running sometime. I'm in your city tonight, and these lights make me feel so inspired. You ain't higher and higher and higher.
The last three songs on this list, they're the sort that kind of forever place you in a distinctive category by yourself, because you showed the ability to make something transcendent. And I never would have expected it from Rod Wave. In terms of capturing a magic and trap and R&B, Street Runner, it's almost otherworldly in how it delivers. When I first heard it charting on the first time on Billboard Breakdown, I was floored. Not just for the perfect integration of the slightly pitched up vocal sample of Ruth B of all people. Yeah, the Lost Boys girl. Opposite that piano line. But also how it eased in some of the trap knock that, yeah, did feel a little bit too heavy, but never to the point where it overwhelmed the song. It works. And then you got Rod Wave, who only just needs the one verse to send a message to a relationship in which he's barely clinging, or maybe not even a relationship, maybe just a fling in that specific town where he's in that city tonight and hopes to catch a moment of magic as the lights burn bright all around him. It's one reason I was a little bit disconcerted to hear that final voice message, it's actually a poem that Rod Wave sampled from Sarah Lioness. I just thought it was from some actual anonymous girl along the route that Rod Wave might know. It just felt so real and organic in the quiet details that are being left in, but in a sense it still does feel universal. a message to the every girl that keeps Rod Wave having that flicker of inspiration, where the keening melody almost sounds a little bit like a pedal steel behind them, stirs my soul every time. This is Rod Wave as fragmented as always, but he captured something so unbelievably beautiful with this song, to the point I'd call this a high watermark for the entire damn genre of trap and R&B. And that's why, despite the fact he's never matched it, I know deep down, he still might. I hold out that hope.
If you don't recognize me when I come back around, it's 'cause all the things I thought I'd be, I let them all burn to the ground.
Whereas for this one, yeah, it's Emily Scott Robinson's best song to date. But she has so much potential that it's very well possible she'll eclipse it 2 or 3 times over in the years and decades to come. But my God, if you want a song to rip your heart out and devastate you in slow motion, this is it. The spare, shuddering pianos where you hear every press on the keys, every quiver in her voice, and a song where she's on the cusp of letting it all fall apart. Religion, that plan gave her everything that she thought she wanted, but was that living? It's a question she's confronting, along with every boundary and moral that she built for herself, and now it's shaking her world apart, where she's on the cusp of leaving it all behind, where it could all go up in flames, and she's acutely aware that the stakes could not be any higher. There are other people, there's a family, but it's a freedom that might be her only chance to live, and she might let it burn to find that, if only for an instant. When I first heard the song, it utterly floored me. The sort of ballad that makes a career. It could well become a signature song, but it's also one that's so powerful, so raw, so real that it might go to places in which too many are terrified to venture. But all the while, Emily Scott Robinson spun a masterpiece, one that chokes me up every single goddamn time I hear it. What could be better?
I'll be looking for nerves to hit. The more of you I drink, the thirstier I get. Baby.
With a little distance, I can see why some might be surprised about this, but you shouldn't be. This is an indie rock song for the goddamn ages. Everything I said about Torres' last song is just as true here, but with a little bit more of a reliance on guitars than synthesizers this time. There's even a goddamn trumpet in this mix to drive that cycling central melody, where the power, it comes in Mackenzie Scott's sheer intensity to sell her passion. And passion is the word for this one. It's yearning, it's hungry, it's nakedly sexual, it's defiant, it's daring to be challenged and provoked, where her partner loves and feeds off that attention, and so does Scott. It's a song that feeds off that mutual fervor, where she's got that bone-deep terror that the partner might move on, but you know what, if she doesn't, the flames will burn a lot hotter and faster and higher. And to me, this is what love is, and what it can be at its best. It's not settling. It's not accepting something that's milquetoast and safe, where you can let that spark gutter. This is a symbiotic loop, a binary star, where the intensity is its own reward, and that simple but perfect guitar solo can ring off into the sunset. It might be rare, it might be hard, but god damn it, does Torres make it sound. Every risk, make it worth it, take every chance. And with that resonance, ever since I heard it, no question, best song of 2021 for me. Just leaving me thirsty for what 2022 has to offer, especially if it comes in like this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know my voice is a little bit raspy. I'm frankly surprised I got through this much, and it actually sounds okay. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching again. And hey, if you guys want to get into arguments about what your favorite songs were, comments are down there. Have fun. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Again, the year-end best list for the albums is going to be dropping in a couple of days. I just need, again, time for voice to heal and to get the rest of the list organized and sorted out. But then, going off of there, if you guys want to help support the channel in the meantime, my merch link is down there below. I'd be happy for you guys to come in and help support the channel, maybe get something for yourself along the way. But beyond that, if you want to go a little bit more direct and long-term, link to my Patreon right over there. We're coming up in the new year. You guys can add albums to my schedule or songs to my schedule. Or, hell, go further beyond that and maybe just argue with me on Discord or just be part of the community. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.